in Canada, when we speak of measurement, we are forced to speak of two measurement systems. There are 192 countries in the United Nations. In that 192 countries, 189 of them use one measurement system. 3 use the other measurement system. Those 3 are the powerful and economic giant of Liberia. Do any of you even know where it is? No. Where? Wrong. Africa. It is in Africa, yes. That was one. The second one is the economic and military powerhouse of Myanmar.
I always assume names like that are in the Middle East.
No, Myanmar is in Asia. It's just beside India. It's what should be called Burma, but the backwards military has taken it over. And rather than treat the people well, they just decide to kill them all. So they've decided that Burma is not an appropriate name. It should be called Myanmar. And third, yes, the economic military powerhouse of the United States. Sadly, we are physically attached to the United States, so we are forced to learn both methods of measurement. Let me give you an example. How tall are you? Excellent. Amelia, where are you from? How tall are you? There you go. She's 165. 165 what? Centimeters. How tall are you, Eloa? 167. Right. Why are they 167? Because they use the smart way of measuring, like the rest of the entire world, but not us. How much do you weigh? You don't have to answer that, Amelia or Eloa. How much do you weigh? 110 pounds. Ask a German. How much do you weigh? 57 kilos. Right? So, sadly for you, we are forced to learn both idiotic measurements. I'm going to open with the idiotic one because I don't like talking about it and I want it out of the way. The imperial system, used in the United States, Liberia, which isn't even a real country. It was an invented country to send slaves back to when they were freed from the United States. That's how stupid the Americans are. Oh, we'll free them, we'll send them home. Look at Africa on a map. It takes up like a quarter of the world. Look at how big Liberia is. It's about the size of a postage stamp. All those people that were taken to the United States to be slaves are not from that one tiny little area. They're from all over the continent. But in the magnanimity of the Americans, here's your own country, go back to it. It's not my country. I don't care. You're going back to it anyway. So even when they were trying to fix the problem, they were being idiots. I shouldn't say just the Americans. The Europeans were just as idiotic about slavery. Actually, every culture is idiotic about slavery because even in Africa, African princes and kings and queens had slaves of their own race. Humans have always had slaves in every culture all the time. But again, if you pick on your own people, it's okay. As soon as you pick on neighbors, we get bothered. And the third one is Myanmar. You don't have to write that down. That's a social studies lesson. Used in 3 places. And it is, of course, based on body parts. Why is that idiotic? Jacqueline? Everyone's body parts are different. So, it's based upon body parts and it has a random, it's based on random amounts. Okay? Now, let's go to the good one. What do we call it? The metric system. That's not what it is called, though. It is called the Système, with an accent grave, international, which is abbreviated to SI. Why is it called that? Because it was invented in France. Why was it invented in France? It was part of the French Revolution. Quick history lesson. You can all learn this now. Back in the day in France, it was chopped up into little tiny pieces because of feudalism. Everybody was in charge of their own little piece. All of Europe was cut up this way. I am the king of this classroom. I own all of you. But Jaden owns his little desk right there. Gersel owns his. No. There you go. They're very minor nobles. So they own a very little tiny bit of France. I own it really, but they own their little bit. So does Anmal, Pardeep, Brody, and Maggie. Now, Elowa is a farmer. Elowa grows lima beans. I don't know if they grew lima beans in France, but that's just what popped into my head. Farmers need to get their crops where? To the customers, yes? Where are the customers? In the city, right? So Elowa loads all her lima beans onto her cart, hooks up the oxen, says au revoir to her husband and children, and starts bringing her cart to Paris, where the king is. She gets to the border with Jaden's land, and what does Jaden say? No way, pay the taxes. And Elowa says, mon Dieu, way, and starts paying cash, right? Now, Jaden, because he's the little lord of his little area, says, your cart is going to pay tax based on the size of your cart. I have very, very big feet. So Jaden measures the cart and finds the cart is 8 feet long. He taxes her based on 8 feet, right? She gets through Jaden, now she could go through Anmal or Pardeep, right? Pardeep is widely known throughout all of France as being kind of like Lord Farquaad. Oh, wow. Really, really short. He has really, really tiny feet. He says, Elowa, your cart is 16 feet long. Because his feet are half the size of Jaden's. So now Elowa has to pay taxes to Pardeep. Double the taxes she had to pay to Jaden, even though it's the same road. Does that bother Elowa? Yeah. Damn right it does. Wait, en français. I don't know. Zut alors, oui. Merci. Zut alors. Then she gets to Brody, and she has to pay yet another tax. All right? Now, next summer, she has her crop of lima beans. She says, I'm not going through that Pardeep. He's got the tiny feet. He charges me extra taxes. But little does she know, Pardeep has passed away, which is the stupidest word ever. Let's just say it. Pardeep has died. Pardeep's son is Shaquille O'Neal with size 22 feet. Okay? Elowa's cart is only 4 feet when it's Pardeep's son, but Elowa doesn't know that. So she doesn't go through Pardeep. She goes through Anmal where it's 12 feet. Does that make her angry? Because she gets to the city and I say, hey, didn't you go through Pardeep? And she says, no. And I say, stupide. Tu es stupide. Le fils de Pardeep est pied tiny. Wait, no. Oh, no. No. Grand. Les pieds de la fils de Pardeep est grand. Le taxes est tiny, petit. Right? Would that bother you? Of course it would bother you as a farmer. Much like everything else the nobles were doing in France. So part of the French Revolution was they wanted a standard system of measurement. So it would be the same all the time. We call it the metric system because measuring things is based on the meter. But we use the metric system to do more than measure, don't we? We use it for weight. We use it for volume. We use it for temperature. Okay? About the only thing we measure that we don't have as metric is time. which is interesting because there's every couple of years somebody says we should go to a metric time. It won't happen. France tried to do metric time. They tried to make the year 10 months long. And they gave each month a new name based on what the season, like what was happening. So July, this is the only one I actually know. In July, when it's hot, what we would call July, they called Thermidor. Therma for heat, thermal. And that was also when the French Revolution went crazy and started chopping off everybody's heads. And we use that in English now. When a revolution goes too far, it's called the Thermidorian reaction. When people are like, whoa, maybe we didn't quite want the revolution to be this bad. See how much you learn in this class, and it's not even all math? So, we call this the metric system. It's everywhere else. Canada officially became metric in 1970, but if you ask your grandparents, because most of your parents are my age, so they would have been like babies when Canada went metric, so they probably still use feet and inches. Like my mom still uses feet and inches. She doesn't think well in metric. But little kids who have always been metric are a little bit better at it, but still not great at it, because we still say, how tall are you? 5'8", even though you were born in what year? 2004? So 34 years after Canada stopped using feet and inches, you guys are still using feet and inches. But anyway. And it, of course, is logically based on 10. Why 10? Because that's how we count. Everything is based on tens. We count numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's 10 numbers. That's how metric works, because that's how we count. Now, in some cultures, they count by more, like the Mayans and the Incas counted to 20. Anyone want to guess why? Feet. Yeah. They were barefoot all the time, so they could count on their toes. Have we? And I showed you what the number for 20 was? It's a guy going, ha ha! Anyways, good. I'm glad we've talked about that. So it's based on 10. It starts at a base, and that base is meter, or gram, or liter. All right? And then it goes up in factors of 10. So upwards, the first one is a deca. So if I'm measuring meters, 1 meter is a meter. That's this. If I have a decameter, that is 10 of these. We don't use that measurement very much in Canada. Do they use it in Europe? Do they use a decameter in Europe? No. But it's there. So this is, if there's 1 there, that's 10 of them. Then it goes up to hecto. If there's 1 there, that's 100 of them. Now, we use hecto in Canada because we talk about hectares, right? When the forest fires are burning, they always talk about how many hectares it is. That's a square that's 100 meters by 100 meters. Hectare. And they use that on all over the world, even here. And then what's the last one? Kilo, which is 1,000. Now, after kilo, because of computers, you all know the next 3. What are they? What comes after kilo? Mega, and after mega? Giga, and after giga? Tera, and after tera? Penta. Nice. All right. And then downwards, of course, we also go downwards. The first one we go down to, and I'll use red for that, the first one we go down to is deci. And they use decimeters in Europe. Deci is 1/10. We don't use them here. They use them in Europe. Down from deci is centi. We use that here, centimeters. Cent, percent, 1/100th. And down from there is milli. which is 1/1000th, because M-I-L-L, mille en français, est 1,000. Everybody cool? You also know some of the ones down this way. Micro, nano, pico is, I think, the next ones. But who cares, right? We're not measuring anything smaller than a millimeter in this class. We're not breaking out a microscope. Everybody cool? All right. Now, the nice thing about metric is it always works. If I wanted to, I live 32 kilometers from the school, yes? So 32 kilometers. So that would be 320 hectometers. 3,200 decameters. 32,000 meters. 320,000 decimeters. 3.2 million centimeters. And 32 million millimeters. Would we ever measure a distance like that? Of course not. Like even height, we could measure it in millimeters, right? Amelia said she's 165 centimeters, right? So that's 16.5 decimeters, right? Or 1,650 millimeters. 1.65 meters. Everybody with me? But she's also 0.00165 kilometers tall, which is idiotic. But we can, yes, go. Au revoir. Vas-y. Vite, vite. Everybody cool? All right. MMCMMKM. Metric, SI, or imperial? Right. These are the SI ones. So, referent. What word do you see in referent? Reference, refer. If you refer to something, what are you doing? You make a comparison so people understand what you're talking about, right? Like if I were to say I was climbing this tree and it was as tall as the rotunda. I'm referring to the rotunda because you all in your heads can see the rotunda. Agreed? So when I say I'm climbing a tree, you know how big it is. Everybody with me? Okay. So a referent is just that. It's something you use to know a distance. Everybody cool? Because not everybody's carrying around a tape measure. Right? So, what is something, and you can talk to your neighbor about this, and I expect you to, what is something which you see, use, have around you all the time that you think is about a millimeter? The what? The width? The length? This part? A millimeter? Okay? Centimeter, but we're on millimeter. So what would be a millimeter? Pardon me? Eraser dust. Okay. Amelia? Pencil, the lead? If you're using a mechanical pencil, most mechanical pencils use 0.7 millimeter lead. Right? So 0.7, 7/10 of a millimeter, that's almost a millimeter, right? So that could be a good one. The lead from my mechanical pencil, right? Now, what's important with these reference? Who has to know what it means? You or me? You, but because I'm marking you, it has to make some sense, right? But really, if it makes sense to you, you're in good shape, right? So you could write a pencil lead, and that would work. Okay, what would be a centimeter? Width of a finger, right? Which finger? I have fat sausage fingers. My middle finger is 2 centimeters. My pinky finger is 1.5. If I go this way, if I go thickness, that's not bad because I got sausage fingers. Now, some of you have lovely, dainty, elegant fingers, right? Some of you... What did he just say? So again, for me, what I would write here is the thickness of my pinky. What would you write there? Whatever works for you. What about a meter? Addison? Waist height? Okay, let's check. I'm short with very short legs. Almost exactly for me. Almost exactly. Would that work for you?
Yes.
You figure? Let's check.
Above my waist. Just a little bit of a stretch above
Why?
my centimeters.
Halfway to your cheek.
Right?
Yes.
Amelia.
Out of base height.
Height of the desk? Little short. But what's the point? Right? It's a guess, right? If I say something is 10 meters tall, I don't know how tall that is. Well, it's about half of me times 10, so 5 of me. Everybody with me? So whatever you want. For me personally, I've actually never measured up to my waist. For me, it's a good step is about a meter for me when I'm thinking about it. If I'm just walking normally, it's every second step. Like every time my right foot hits the ground would be a meter. For me. Everybody cool? Now, all those are easy. Why? Like it took you 2 seconds to come up with all of those. Why?
Because it's
Small, easy to see, easy to visualize. What's wrong with kilometer? It's giant, right? No part of me, nothing I carry is a kilometer long. So what do you have to do? Yeah, you got to refer to a refer, right? It's a double referent. Now, for me personally, I drive a lot, right? You all know that. I tell stories about driving all the time. 60 kilometers an hour is a pretty average driving speed. Even though the speed limit's 50, most people drive 60. If you don't have a light in the way, 60 kilometers in an hour means you're going 1 kilometer in 1 minute, yes? So my referent for a kilometer is about how far I can drive in 1 minute. Now, none of you drive, right? Yesterday, the other class, because we're a little bit ahead, they thought about the run around Mill Lake, which is 2 kilometers, right? Okay, so close enough. And they're like, well, it takes me 15 minutes to do that run, and a kilometer is half of that. So they were like, about 7 minutes of running, or 15 minutes of walking, right? Everybody understand? Whatever works for you. If I only have to run 1 kilometer, I can get it out of the way in about 4 or 5 minutes. If I got to run 10 kilometers, it takes about 6 minutes. Okay? So you do your own, whatever it is. For me, I always use 1 minute of driving. All right. So now we got to do the relationships. Which one of those is my starting point? Millimeter, centimeter, meter, or kilometer? Meter. Why? Right, because it's the one that has no prefix. Right? So here is our base. Everything else is based on this. A millimeter is 1/1000th of the base, which means 1,000 millimeters equals 1 meter. What's a centimeter? 1/100th, which means 100 centimeters equals 1 meter. Then the base. And then the next one that we use is kilo, which means 1 kilo equals 1,000 meters. Now, it's weird, right? It's counterintuitive, because as the measurement gets bigger, what happens to the number? It gets smaller. 5,000 meters is only 5 kilometers. Because every time you move You move the decimal one space because we go by tens, right? So to get from meters to kilometers, kilo, deca, hecto, kilo. I got to move it 3 spaces. But since the number is getting smaller, I got to move it to the left 3 spaces. Everybody cool? All right. Now, you don't have to remember that because I'm going to show you how to do it with math. But after you've practiced it once or twice, you'll just be moving the decimal in your head, which is what all my American friends say, because I only hang out with intelligent Americans. And they're all like, I know we should go metric, but we just can't. Now let's get to the dumb side. Imperial. Anybody know how big an inch is? It's 2.5 centimeters, a little bit more. So if our centimeter is the thickness of a pinky, what would an inch be? 2.5 pinkies. Does anybody know the word for inch in French? No? No? Pouce. What's pouce in French? What else does it mean? Close. Thumb. A pouce is thumb. Now, obviously, it's not your full thumb. I use this part of my thumb, the first joint. And it's a little bit more, but it's good enough. So I use my thumb. The next one's really tricky. Your foot. Now, for me, it's not quite my foot, it's my shoe. My shoe is exactly 1 foot long. Now, would that be the same for all of you? Of course not. That's part of the problem, right? Okay, my wife, she has canoe feet. They're almost the same size as me. Her shoes are about 1 foot. My sister-in-law wears a size 5. She's a grown-up, a size 5. Her shoes look like doll shoes when I pick them up. So, what about a yard? Does anybody know how big a yard is? Nope. Nope. That's a fathom. A big step, right? Because a yard is almost exactly a meter. So I, again, use a good step. Anybody know what a mile is? .6. It's actually 1.609, but 1.6. But 1.6 is barfy, right? That's pretty close to 1.5, yeah? So, if it's a 1-minute drive to do a kilometer, what is it to do a mile for me? If it's 1.5 times bigger. 1 minute and 30 seconds. So 1.5 minutes of driving. Or it's a 4-minute run, so it's a 6-minute run to do a mile. Everybody good? Now, this is why it's stupid. What's the base there? There isn't one, is there? Because in imperial, everything is messed up. What do you want to call the base there? What? Well, let's call the inch because it's the smallest one. So first of all, nothing smaller than an inch. There's no centi-inch. If you go smaller than an inch, you're doing fractions, which we're going to do in this unit. But if we're going to call that the base, fine, because it's the smallest. What's its relationship to a foot? 12. That makes sense, right? Because we often count things to 12. What do we count to 12? 2 things. What? Eggs and time. Months are time. Eggs and time. Oh, and I guess donuts. So you get a dozen donuts. Smallest. Well, a baker's dozen is 13. Because he bakes 13 donuts to sell to you, but he bakes 1 extra for himself. That's why it's called the baker's dozen. So, for herself. Not all bakers are men. There's only one baker. It can't grammatically be themselves. We've made it themselves so we can have non-gender specific language. Anyways, a foot is 1 foot equals 12 inches, right? So logically, a yard should have something to do with 12, shouldn't it? But it doesn't, because what's a yard? Anyone know?
20 inches?
No. 1 yard equals 3 feet. That makes sense, which is, of course, 36 inches. Anyone know how big a mile is? It'd be nice if it was something smart, like 1,000 or something. Anyone know what it is? It's 1,500 meters. It's actually 1,609 meters, but... Anyone know? 1 mile equals, you ready? 1,760 yards. Logic. Yards. And 5,280 feet. Yes, I know. It's idiotic. Now, do you think you have to memorize all this? No, of course not. You have to be able to do work with it, but I'm going to give you lists. You do not have to have all this memorized. The only other thing I want to talk about right now, because class is about to end, and please don't get up when the class ends, is inches are abbreviated as IN or 2 quotation marks, like quotes. Feet are abbreviated as FT or 1, an apostrophe. Yards are Y or YD, and miles is a pain because we have meters, so miles is MI. Everybody cool? The bell's about to ring. We're going to stop there. You have no homework tonight.